Fans of the Faceoff, welcome. It is Wednesday, August 23rd. We're a little behind schedule due to some technical difficulties, but we are here and we are live. I'd like to welcome in the usual suspect, Julian McKenzie. I'll start with you. Julian, how's it going?
Life's going okay, my man. Life is going fine, and it's going exceptionally well today because of the special guest we have on the show this week.
Without further ado, our special guest, Mike Drew, former guest of the Faceoff, multiple-time visitor of the Faceoff. Mike, it's been forever, man. How you doing?
It has. It's good to be here, fellas. I'm glad we were actually able to make this thing happen.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We got some things to discuss, guys, some life updates, and I want to start with you, Julian. You recently had something pretty impressive published. Why don't you tell the people about it?
So for the better part of the last 8 months, I've been putting together an oral history on a game that took place 25 years ago between the USA basketball team of 1992, as you all know, the Dream Team. They took part in a qualifying tournament known as the Tournament of the Americas, and Team Canada had a crack at them. So for the last few months, I've been interviewing guys from Team Canada squad in 92, like a bunch of random no-name guys. Not to, belittle their NBA accomplishments, but they only had like maybe 2 or 3 actual NBA guys in comparison to the legends that were assembled on the USA team. And I just asked them some questions about how the team came together that year. They had a point guard that was supposed to be there, but he ends up getting injured because of his teammate Bill Wennington falling on his leg. And then you have, the game itself against the United States. And then the fallout after that, Canada doesn't make the Olympics that year. A lot of guys are still upset about that. A lot of guys are kind of still hung up over it, but they still relish the opportunity over playing against the Dream Team. So it's a really interesting story. You can check it out on Press Basketball, this upcoming website that talks about, obviously, basketball and, founded up in Canada. Shout out to the former editor-in-chief, Mark Griffin, for giving me the green light to do this piece for the website, and Joshua Howe, the current editor-in-chief, who, oversaw the editing for the piece as well. Shout out to those guys. So give it a read if you can at Press Basketball, and also check out their other content as well.
You guys should definitely check out this article at Press Basketball. It's very interesting. You see lots of stuff on the Dream Team all the time, but this is one of the more unheard of stories that is associated with that. Mike Drew, not to leave you hanging, you've been up to some stuff in the meanwhile. Why don't you fill us in on that?
Yeah, I was telling Julian moments before we came on here, I've been away in Florida covering the Babe Ruth Softball World Series, and I spent 3 weeks down there in Jensen Beach and just got back a couple weeks ago. That was an experience, to say the least. And as I told Julian, you're talking about girls who are between the ages of 8 and 18 who participated in this thing. And as you guys can imagine, the younger the kids get, the crazier some of the stories get. And some of them probably aren't suited for here. But it was a really good time and a lot of good experience down there and a lot of good connections and all that. So I'm happy it worked out.
We will be hearing more about some softball later on in the show. Looking forward to that. But, guys, we got to start with the big news of the week. NBA offseason, which has been crazy thus far, had kind of quieted down just a little bit, but only for the big buildup for arguably the biggest trade yet, and that is Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics. Cleveland gets Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and the Brooklyn first-round pick in return. Guys, let's start with Mike Drew, our guest and a Boston native. Your initial thoughts on this move?
Well, guys, I got to tell you, I thought the eclipse was going to be the thing that blinded my eyes this week, but turns out it's all these green teamers who are still out here dancing in the streets with their pants down. Some of them, I'm really impressed. They broke out the Larry Bird pastels from '86. I mean, they put a lot of effort into this thing. But in all seriousness, I applaud Danny Ainge for this on multiple levels. The biggest being that it would have been very easy for him to fall into a decision that a lot of other people in this town would have made, which was to give Isaiah Thomas a max contract when he's on the verge of turning 29 with a bad hip. And granted, Isaiah, I'm sad. I am sad to see him go as part of this because he did basically carry the torch for the team for a couple of years and bring them back to respectability on the map. So I totally understand and respect everything that he did. But you're talking about getting a guy now in Kyrie Irving. This ain't no pony, all right? You're talking about getting a legit horse here who, by the way, is 25 years old and only getting better. And this has already been an offseason where you added another scorer in Gordon Hayward in free agency. You added him to Al Horford. You added him to Jaylen Brown. You got another potential scorer in Jason Tatum in the draft. This team has completely changed its identity overnight here this summer. And to think that Ainge, with what he got Isaiah Thomas for in Phoenix, helped turn him into Kyrie Irving, it's pretty stunning. So I'm not in the camp of a lot of people who make these rapid judgments these days and say that the Celtics are the favorites in the East. No. We all understand Cleveland still has LeBron, and it's going to be that way for this year. But I think that this was a monumental deal, and I'm very impressed and happy that Danny Ainge actually made a legitimate trade, a trade that in a couple of years he may actually lose it. There's an actual chance he could lose the deal. I mean, you didn't get Kyrie Irving for nothing. You had to give up a legit package here, and I'm happy that he finally took some risk.
Yeah, a lot to pick apart from this thing. Julian, before we jump the gun and really start talking about potential Eastern Conference Finals matchup way down the road, I just want your initial reactions when you saw that this trade went down.
So I'm on record saying that I thought that Kyrie Irving was not actually going to get traded. I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers did not have to deal away Kyrie Irving, but this was also before he started becoming, MIA from the team, and word was starting to trickle out that he would rather not report to training camp than play another game for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So it got to a point where the Cavs literally had no choice but to deal away Kyrie Irving. And more often than not, we've seen over the last few months, DeMarcus Cousins comes to mind, a guy who it seems as if, it's becoming more clear and clear that he doesn't really want to play for this franchise. And the franchise is kind of hogtied with trying to deal away a player. And in the case of Cleveland, they get Jay Crowder, they get Isaiah Thomas. They can deal with the whole signing into a deal later, but they get a scoring guard in Isaiah Thomas. They get a big man, and they get that first-round pick, which would be an outstanding thing to start with in the post-LeBron era, which, I assume could happen at the end of next year. So the fact that the Cleveland Cavaliers were able to get as much as they did for Kyrie Irving is a plus on their part. On the side of Boston, the one thing that kind of weirded me out about it, personally, one of the rumors that were going on about Kyrie Irving at the start of this whole thing was that he could end up in Phoenix. And he's still a top guard in this league, and him going out to the Western Conference, he's out of your misery. But for him to go to Boston, the team that in my mind is the closest challenger to Cleveland's throne, as a GM, I don't understand why you would even think about, making that other team better. That being said, as a GM, when you're forced with the situation you have where you have a player who doesn't seem as if he wants to play for you and the value on him could decrease day by day, sometimes you're left with no other choice. As for Cleveland, if they're the winner and loser of this deal, obviously really early to determine that. But I do like the fact that they were able to get some pretty solid pieces for Kyrie Irving.
It was an impressive haul, I thought, for a team with seemingly not a ton of leverage, considering Kyrie he asked for a trade. How do you get a leg to stand on? And it seems like, sure, the Celtics are full of assets, but they had, Ainge had held on to those tighter than most teams would. It's hard to say there's any stronger assets out there, but hypothetically speaking, Ainge is notorious for holding on to those assets, and he finally lets it go. It is also interesting, Julian, you pointed out that these were the only two relevant teams in the East. You want to talk about other teams in the East, maybe Toronto is up there, but I think it's pretty clear that it came down to these two, and for them to swap such serious role players, this is something we haven't seen in this league in quite some time, in any league for that matter. I think if it were to happen, NBA is the most likely spot where it would happen. I mean, half the tweets yesterday were literally just this league, this offseason. It's been really entertaining. Let's start to break down. First of all, this is the question I want to ask, because Kyrie Irving wanted out of Cleveland because he wanted to be the man, right? Obviously, he was not the best player on that team behind LeBron James. You could argue maybe he wasn't even the second best player, depending on Kevin Love's health, and his output was up and down throughout his tenure there. But Mike Drew, do you think Kyrie Irving is right now the best player on the Boston Celtics?
Without a doubt, absolutely, yes. I mean, you look at the rest of the roster, this guy is a legitimate top 10 player in the league. There is not another one sitting there on that roster right now. Gordon Hayward's not in that camp. Al Horford's certainly not in that camp. And they do have some guys who could potentially develop into some good players. We talked about them earlier, but Brown and Tatum, they're still years away. This guy is now the alpha dog, which is what he wanted to be. And he comes to the Celtics, and he's going to be that. I do have some reservations about a guy who actively wants to leave the situation that he was in, which is basically a guaranteed trip to the finals every year next to LeBron. But the only reason I can think that this came about as quickly as it did is because people on both sides of this thing, in both Cleveland and with the Celtics, have a pretty good inkling that LeBron's going to be gone after next year and go to the West. And I think that's a legitimate reason why the Brooklyn pick was in there. And Isaiah and everything else. Zizic, who's a prospect in every sense of the term. I think everybody kind of has a pretty good idea here that LeBron's going to be a Laker in 2018. So that, to me, is why the thing came together as quickly as it did. But yeah, Kyrie, I do have some concerns about a guy who wants to leave like that, but we'll see what he's going to do. Sometimes when guys who are in that B role step into the A role, the headlights are a little bit brighter than they thought they were going to be. But I don't necessarily think that's the case with this guy. I mean, we saw him basically win a finals for Cleveland with a shot in Game 7. So we're going to have to see how it plays out.
Not to mention, just before LeBron even came into the picture, Kyrie Irving was given the reins in Cleveland. Fine, his team around him was not necessarily great, and he wasn't guaranteed finals trips every year. But this was a guy who was a young player and was given the keys to a team, and then out of nowhere, LeBron James comes back, and then he has to play second fiddle.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a valid concern, Mike, that who wouldn't want to play alongside LeBron James? Look, I've said this before about Kyrie. He's a top 10 basketball player in the world. He's probably not a top 10 NBA player in the world, but I think Brad Stevens could turn that around. And it all depends to me, Mike, if he decides to start playing some defense. Look, he doesn't have huge defensive shoes to fill in for Isaiah Thomas, no pun intended. I mean, he was literally the worst defender in the entire NBA last season. And we can get to that in a second and how that will affect Cleveland. But I think it's a valid question that maybe Gordon Hayward has that edge over Kyrie. Definitely not in terms of potential upside, but right now, this second, I think that Kyrie Irving has a lot to prove. I don't think he's going to waltz in as a superstar. I think this will either make or break him as a superstar.
Well, I think that's a valid, that's a valid argument. I can understand it. But I just think that based on everything else that you can talk about in Kyrie's game, understanding the defense isn't obviously where you'd like it to be for a player with a name like his. I just think in that league, what matters is guys who have the ability to take the shot and make the shot at the end of the game. And Kyrie, to me, is that guy. And the Celtics, you look at last year, they had one scorer on the team, one. And the guy was 5'9". Okay? So he was very easy to take out of the game once he got deeper into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Now they've got 3 scorers that they've added to the team. They've got some ability to kind of maneuver things around. I just happen to think that right now, well, we all know Kyrie, I believe, is a better scorer than Gordon Hayward is. And to me, that's what it's about in that league when you get into big games at the end. So to me, I value that a lot. However, you're right. Kyrie, he does have a lot to prove, and he's going to have a lot of adjustments to make playing under Brad Stevens. Because to me, guys, not to go off on another tangent, but that's another thing that is so fascinating about this whole thing to me is Brad Stevens actually has some legit players now. You know, he really hasn't had that yet. This has always been, you know, the little engine that could team for the last couple of years. Everybody in town, everybody calls them the Bridge Celtics, which essentially they were with Isaiah and Horford. But now you're talking about
unbelievable, really. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and now you're talking about legit firepower that you can throw out there on the court. And for a coach like Brad Stevens, in theory, this is his opportunity to prove what he can do with some actual real players at his disposal. So I'm fascinated to see that.
Hey, Julian, I want to get your opinion on this. I mean, okay, I'm going to propose another question along that's very much on topic. And if you're LeBron James, and we're talking about this year and this year only in Cleveland, because obviously we don't know what the future holds for LeBron. And I think it's pretty clear that Cleveland made this move with their future beyond LeBron potentially in mind. But if you're LeBron James this season in Cleveland, who would you rather have, Kyrie Irving or Isaiah Thomas?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, you've had Kyrie all these years. He pretty much gets you that ring in 2016. But IT's a guy who can ball as well. I get it. He's a smaller guy. He can't defend. I think LeBron will find a way to kind of pump him up. Maybe if you're taking their overall play into account, Kyrie is a slightly better defender than IT because of his size. Fine, you take Kyrie, but I mean, I don't know if LeBron is looking at the haul he's got right now and thinking, you know, we got the wrong end of this deal. I think getting a guy like Isaiah Thomas, who's been a real heart and soul guy since he's come into the league, and especially last year where he balls out and is literally the engine that could for Boston, I have to think that LeBron can be a little bit excited about Isaiah Thomas on his team and getting some more depth in a guy like Jay Crowder, who that's another guy I like since he was playing up in Dallas. You know, a guy with some size and a guy who can come off the bench and shoot threes. That was something they were looking for heading into the playoffs last year, guys who can come off the bench and shoot. And now that they have those two players, they've added a bit of depth. And look, fine, maybe he may want Kyrie, but I think with a guy like LeBron who was already going into this year, you know, thinking vengeance, thinking, you know, on the attack and trying to, you know, assert his dominance and get back at Golden State, at this point, he's going with anybody right now. And I'll say, for in terms of skill, maybe Kyrie, but maybe the beef that was there with him and Kyrie was just too much.
Here's the question I've been dying to ask. It's probably not the most pertinent question in terms of who will actually go on to win the finals this year in the NBA, but I gotta ask, Mike Drew, why now? Why did Danny Ainge finally decide to split with these precious picks, one of these picks anyway, when it's seemingly he could have had either Jimmy Butler are better than Kyrie Irving for a cheaper price? Why now?
Yeah, I don't have the best answer for that, but I think it's a combination of things. You know, the Paul George situation, that was the reason that didn't work out was kind of more because of Indiana than it was the Celtics. The Celtics were fully prepared to make that deal, and frankly, that deal should have been made, and it was pretty idiotic on Indiana's part not to take the Celtics offer. Jimmy Butler, I think that just kind of fizzled out. I don't know. Danny Ainge, he typically gets into situations where it sounds good to him to offer up these coveted assets, and then at the last second, when the deal's on the table, he's like, let me pull that back. In this case, I think that Kyrie story has really been developing over the last few weeks or so. This is kind of really come into everybody's consciousness, that, oh crap, this guy really does want out. And I think Ainge saw all of that stuff and said, all right, you know what? I'm still sitting on this Brooklyn pick. I really want to use it in these fireworks this year. And I really want to, in his mind, weaken Cleveland once LeBron is there, at least in the short term. In the long term, obviously, in theory, you're helping the organization get the pick and position and all of that. But I think that it just came about, and everybody on both sides knew Kyrie wanted out, and the Celtics offered the best package. I think really that's the simplest answer. Really, I think in Ainge's world had everything going perfectly for him to this point. To have Paul George, and this whole thing never would have happened. But this is the hand that everybody was dealt, and jumped on the chance to get Kyrie Irving.
I like Mike's answer, and I think that actually makes a lot of sense. As a Eastern Conference general manager, it's an opportunity to weaken your toughest opponent in your way. In this case, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Opportunity to jump at that, and find you have to deal away your potential first overall, at least a top pick, courtesy of Brooklyn. That terrible trade they made. Especially if LeBron is going to leave Cleveland, you're not going to have Cleveland nearly as even behind your neck. So it makes it easier to stomach to make this happen. Paul George, this is the guy who's seemingly had his heart set on going to LA. So if you make a deal with Paul George and you only have him for a year, that doesn't necessarily play that well. Butler, I guess, would have been nice, but you know what? I'm sure there are some Boston fans who are not complaining about Kyrie Irving. One thing I want to add, though, we haven't really mentioned this at all. On the part of Isaiah Thomas. I don't know how much this is happening, but I've seen it happen. The fans were burning his jersey. First off, burning jerseys is a total waste of time. An absolute waste of money, an absolute waste of resources. Absolutely ridiculous. But this was a guy who did not ask to leave. This is a guy, pulled out his heart and soul, played a game after he loses his siblings in a terrible accident. He plays a game of his life. Shout out to all the fans in Boston who are grateful for this guy. But thumbs down to few fans who feel it's a cool opportunity to bring attention and burn his jersey for clicks. Because they're not just burning his jersey just to burn it. You see the guys, they'll post it on social media to burn it for clicks, Yeah, you're going for the team. You suck. Isaiah Thomas is one of the few guys, I understand the league is a business, sports is a business. But if there's one guy I can think that he doesn't deserve to have this happen to him, it's Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, I can't stand stand this. This is my number one pet peeve in sports is the smear campaign. I can't do it. All these people, you mentioned the jersey burner, everybody else was calling at the top radio today, without Isaiah. My question to you is, where were you 2 months ago? Why did you come out of the woodwork today? Why come out of the cave now? Because he's gone. These people are weak. They didn't have the opinion a couple months ago. Now it's convenient because you got a better player. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I don't give these people any time of day.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And I'll take it even a step further. It's interesting, Mike, that we've started to see some stories come out that are negative about Isaiah Thomas, especially from the Boston market. What that his hip may not be as healthy as we think it is, or that he was starting to rub some players the wrong way. And my favorite, Mike, is that they're starting to say how Brooklyn, who won no games last year and got rid of their only good player, Brook Lopez, is somehow not terrible anymore. I mean, what is your take on that?
It really is unbelievable. I'm telling you, these green teams, it is ridiculous. These guys are number one in the sports universe when it comes to dumping more gasoline onto a bad fire. I mean, I saw the stories today about Isaiah, not getting along with people in the locker room. Conveniently, that came out this afternoon. And then they went straight to Avery Bradley. Somebody did in Detroit, and he goes, "Who wrote that? That's correct.
Kelly
It's so obvious that this thing was made up and contrived by somebody to do it. And, it's ridiculous how this kind of stuff happens. That goes along with everything we were just talking about. The Brooklyn thing, I've heard that too. It's ridiculous. I mean, really? Are you really going to sit there and tell me that the Brooklyn Nets have improved enough to the point where that pick is not even going to be worth anything to the Cavs? Can you honestly look me in the face and say that? The scary thing is, these green teamers, they actually can. They will look at you and say that, and you just have to look the other way. Absurd what some of these people think.
Brooklyn, what do you do?
I know we probably won't know the answer to this for another couple years, depending on, obviously, if Kyrie stays, which I presumably think he will, and depending on who Cleveland takes with this Brooklyn pick and how high that Brooklyn pick will be. But if you had to predict, who won this trade?
Ultimately, with all those qualifications in there that you just said, I think the Celtics did. Because I think that's the best player in the deal. And in the league, it's about having the best players. It's a players' league above all else. And it's a stars league above all else. And the Celtics improved the most immediately. The Celtics clearly see a window for themselves in the foreseeable future. And Kyrie Irving's going to be a big part of that. I'm glad you mentioned the extension stuff, because to me, that makes it a no-doubter at that point. If Kyrie Irving re-signs and stays here long-term, it's all one trade for the Celtics if that happens. But without knowing that, I do still think the Celtics are going to win the trade. But as I said earlier, there's a legit chance that they're going to lose it if Irving doesn't stay, and if that Brooklyn pick ends up being something that Cleveland cashes in on, that's the risk you take here. But as we sit here right now, I still think that the Celtics won the trade.
Julian, who do you think won the trade?
I have to side with my trade. I think the Boston Celtics won this trade. This is a trade in my mind that if it doesn't make them the outright winner of the conference this year, I think going forward they will be. And I guess that does follow on the idea that LeBron will leave in Cleveland, but we're getting that sentiment that's 99.99% happening. But I think the Celtics found themselves with a team that is a lot better than last year. They end up with a guard who, they don't have to worry too much about Max right now. Better defender than IT, better. You can make the argument better scorer as well. I like this deal for Boston. I understand they had to give up that first round pick, but this is a deal that can make them winners going forward in the Eastern Conference. They may still need something to actually compete with Golden State and beat them in a series. But this is a team, just kind of like Cleveland over the last few years. Well, with LeBron anyway going to the finals, you can see Boston as the top of the Eastern Conference for a long time.
And real quick, let me be clear. I do hate giving up the Brooklyn pick, obviously. That makes the trade a lot less attractive to me. But the saving grace, in my eyes, at least right now, as I said earlier, you held on to both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, which was huge. And you also still have that Lakers pick for next year, which probably could fall between 2 and 5. And as long as that happens, you're good. You're fine. But we obviously don't know that yet. Guys,
there are so many variables in play here beyond just initial reaction. I mean, look, yes, I think Boston did haul in the best player in the trade looking forward in Kyrie Irving. But there are a lot of different variables at stake in which I think make Cleveland the winner. I think they had to get rid of Kyrie Irving, and to get that haul for a guy who asked for a trade, demanded a trade in which you have no leverage, to bring in a guy like Isaiah Thomas who will basically step in almost just as effectively, perhaps even a better clutch scorer. I know Kyrie in the finals, all that, but IT owned the fourth quarter last year, and that could be a huge asset for LeBron. Plus a guy like Jay Crowder, and I think Jay Crowder is actually technically overrated. I think he's a streaky shooter, and his perimeter defense is a little exaggerated, still above average, definitely, but not in terms of the elite category. But still, you look at that contract. He's making $6 million, $7 million, and then $7 million under control for the next 3 years. That's one of the best value contracts in the league. That's huge. And in case LeBron leaves, to top it off, they got that 2018 Brooklyn pick. Brooklyn's going to be a disaster this year. That's going to be a very valuable pick, and they're going to be able to move on even if LeBron leaves them behind, which I think is looking more and more likely as each day passes. I think Cleveland won this trade, and I think Cleveland will win in a series versus Boston come the postseason. But the question is not just, in Danny Ainge's eyes, it's not just this postseason. It's the next 10 postseasons in which I think Boston will have a huge advantage in the future. But in terms of this year, guys, does this change the Eastern hierarchy for either of you? I know, Mike Drew, you said no.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Cleveland still got LeBron. As long as that is the case, I mean, it's clockwork. The guy is going to go to the finals no matter who he has next to him. As we say, that whole variable of him leaving next year, provided that does happen, now we can start to have the conversation about the Celtics being legitimate finals contenders. But yeah, no, it doesn't change a thing to me in terms of who's ultimately going to win that series in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Julian, you think Boston becomes a new favorite, or are you sticking with Cleveland and LeBron, who's made 7 straight finals?
It's really hard to go against LeBron on this one. As long as LeBron James is doing the way the finals road to Cleveland somehow, I think LeBron, as long as he's there, Boston isn't going to be able to get through. If he leaves after next season, that road's going to be a lot easier for Boston. Maybe they'll have to worry about the Washington Wizards going forward. Who knows? But as of now, the Cleveland Cavaliers are still the favorites to get out of the East.
Well, I'll tell you this. Guys. Here's the one scenario in my mind in which the Celtics actually get to the finals this year. Say LeBron, barring injury, that's a given, but let's say it gets to a point where LeBron he's playing with and realizes, I'm not into it. Granted, LeBron is the best player in the world. We all know that. He's proven it time and time again. But it is a league in the NBA where things don't go your way in the regular season or in a series, and you're the best player, you kind of have a tendency to quit. So if LeBron just lays it down and says, you know what, I'm checking out, I'm out of here, I don't care, I did my job here, I already got my ring in Cleveland, I'm going to LA, see you later, bye-bye, I don't care. Then that could potentially open the door for the Celtics this year. I'm not saying that's likely. I think it's very unlikely. But that would be the only scenario in which the Celtics meet up with Golden State in the finals.
I feel like the closest we'd ever see LeBron saying, you know what, I'm just going to quit. It would have to be in the season against Boston. I feel like the regular season would be enough of a breeze. It doesn't matter if they either finish first or they finish second. To quote a famous, YouTube comedian, Haha Davis, these Cavaliers are looking at the Eastern Conference and saying, this is going to be a breeze. You not have to worry about that. The playoffs, the first 2 rounds, he doesn't even need to try that hard. LeBron is going to quit. It's going to be in a conference final matchup against Boston.
Yeah, I mean, look, Cleveland's biggest or weakest link, rather, was their defense last year, and they went ahead and added the worst defensive player in the entire league. That's definitely going to be an issue. But I'm not going against LeBron. 7 straight and counting. And look, Mike, you're right. He quit on Cleveland when he had planned on going to Miami in 2010. We saw him when he got bounced in the second round by the Boston Celtics. Who else? But that was pre-winning a ring, LeBron. I don't see that happening again. In fact, I see the opposite. Now that Kyrie is gone, I think LeBron James just became the favorite to win MVP this season. I think he's going to be playing with a vengeance. And if this is his last go in Cleveland, he needs to make it a good one. Because when he came back, he said he's coming home. And he had the whole Cleveland or nowhere slogan going crazy during the Rajay Davis home run. If he's going to leave, if he goes out in a quitting type of manner, that could potentially destroy his legacy that he worked so hard to reaffirm there in his home state where he finally brought a ring. To go out with that bad taste in the mouth, I cannot fathom it. I just cannot visualize that actually happening.
No, I understand. Look, I'm not trying to say that this is a likely scenario. It's not. But you know, if we remember, back to when LeBron did come back to Cleveland, his whole mission was that he was going to bring a ring back there. A ring. That's what he said. So if I am to take him at his word, if I am to take him at his word, maybe. I'm not saying.
I think it's a valid point. We got to move on because we got some other stuff to get to. But real quick, I want just one sentence answers. Does this trade at all affect the Warriors or in any way at least threaten the Warriors to send it to more than 5 games potentially in the NBA Finals? Mike, what do you think?
No chance. Zero.
Julian?
Nope.
Okay. Me neither. We're all on the same page on that one. Guys, let's get into some baseball. After all, it is August. We have the waiver deadline coming up. Some pennant races going on. Exciting time. And we just actually missed some history during this show. Rich Hill had a perfect game ruined by an error in the 9th inning. In a 0-0 tie. And Pittsburgh, still being no hit, won the game on a Josh Harrison walk-off home run to break up the no-hitter. That's the first time ever a walk-off home run has broken up a no-hitter as the Pirates defeat the Dodgers in a rare loss for the Dodgers, who are now only 53 games over 500. Guys, are the Dodgers somehow underrated?
I don't know how to get that. That's kind of crazy to me. I mean, I think all year we've vaulted them on this pedestal thinking that they're going to be this historic team that's just going to demolish everyone in the league. I find that kind of weird. That could even be suggested. That's in my view.
Let me just clarify. I feel like because they're on the West Coast, we don't pay as much attention to them. We go, oh, the Dodgers won again last night, but we're not really analyzing them every single day. They should be the lead of every single story. They had the best 50-game, 60-game stretch in 105 years. They've won 22 series in a row. I think they just lost this one to Pittsburgh now. But they are crushing records, and they're doing it with Kershaw on the DL. Gonzalez has been out the majority of the year. Darvish just went on the DL. I mean, they've been doing it with young guys you never even heard of before this year. Mike, you want to say something?
That's it. That's precisely it. Kershaw's gone right now. Gonzalez is gone. Darvish is gone. How many guys on that Dodger team can the average person name right now? Not very many. And look where they are. That's precisely the reason why they would be underrated on the national landscape. It's a no-name team. But it doesn't matter who they put in what position. They're all excelling. They're all having good years. Even Yasiel Puig, okay? And he should really be the guy who's the standard here. Even Yasiel Puig has figured it out enough to be a productive major league player every day for them. And not to mention what Bellinger is giving. Bellinger, that kid is an incredible story. But again, not a household name to all baseball fans. I get he was a big story in the first half and at the All-Star game, whatever. But he just does he really move the needle all that much? No. And the big guys aren't there. I think it's a great team. As I said when we previewed the season with you guys, I think it's a team that is going to win the World Series. But that's the reason they're not really moving the needle right now, is because people are just unsure of what they're going to watch.
Look, I think it's interesting because, I mean, they are on pace to tie the record, I think, at 116 wins, 2001 Mariners. And it's interesting to me because you look at just some of the records around baseball, right? Single season or all time. Anytime someone gets close, it feels like we pay a lot of attention to it. For instance, I mean, hypothetically, if someone were to have a hit streak even into late 30s, early 40s, we would be watching like crazy. Now we have a team that is right there on track, and I'm sure once they get into the actual 110s, that it'll dominate the news cycle. But for the time being, I mean, they are right there, Mike Drew. They are right there with the 01 Mariners. And like we were just talking about, they're doing it with people that the casual fan has never heard of. I mean, you look at some of the greatest teams of all time, the 27 Yankees, 39 Yankees. I mean, Hall of Famers left and right, even the 98 Yankees. And that 01 Mariners team, yeah, they had just lost Griffey and A-Rod, but they still had Ichiro, who was the MVP. They had Edgar Martinez, a potential Hall of Famer. They had Brett Boone, who had a hell of a season. And they still were stacked. I think this Dodgers team is a true underdog team to break this record. And I know Dave Roberts is not concerned at all with this record, and they have everything locked up. And like we said, they're already started putting guys on the shelf, even if they don't necessarily have to. I think if they were in a tight race, I think Darvish would be pitching right now. I think Kershaw would be pitching right now. But they have the luxury where they don't need to do that, or they ultimately could fall short of this record. But here's the point I want to make. This team has made it to the NLCS. How many times they've won? They've won the NL West 4 years in a row, about to be 5. But they can't seem to make the World Series. They haven't made it since '88. Is this your disappointment if the Dodgers don't win the World Series? Julian, what do you think?
Absolutely. And I've seen some of these Dodgers teams, they go off to win the NL West. Clayton Kershaw balls out in the regular season, and we're putting up postings looking for him in the postseason. This year of all years, if they don't go to the World Series and win, it's an ultimate disappointment. Especially if they set that record of 116 wins. Even if they fall a little short, they've proven to be by far the best team in baseball all year. Not to mention a lot of those regulars. Yes, some of them are injured. A guy like Kershaw, on the shelf, he doesn't have to play right now. He gets an opportunity to recuperate and get back into the lineup. A lot of these no-name guys are stepping up and allowing some of the regulars to step up, and then you can call them down in the postseason. For them to miss out on the World Series after the year that they're having right now will be an ultimate disappointment. Also, to add to the last question we're talking about, them being kind of underrated. Once again, I'd like to bring up here, we're late August. There's still a lot of racetrack to be run. Yes, the Dodgers are probably going to end the year as the best team in baseball. But maybe the talk about them approaching greatness and then achieving greatness isn't something that we're going to kick in an overdrive until about a month from now, when they're within striking distance of that happening. Right now, we're in August 23rd right now, at the time of this recording. I think people are just kind of waiting a little bit. But to answer the question that's been posed right now, it would be an ultimate disappointment if the Dodgers miss out on the World Series. And I get the Cubs are there. The Nationals are pretty good this year, but that's also another team that's underachieved in the postseason. But man, you had a year like what the Dodgers are having right now, and you missed the finals. Disappointment.
Mike Drew, you think it's World Series or bust out in Hollywood?
Yes. It's an absolute failure if the Dodgers are not in the World Series, and the way this year's going for them, it's a failure if they don't win it. Guys, ever since Magic Johnson went out there and got his money involved with the Dodgers, and their payroll is what it is, I'm sorry. Expectations come with that. This is a team that absolutely should have at least been in a World Series by now, as Jake was pointing out. They absolutely need to win it this year. And you know what? Kershaw needs to do a lot for himself this postseason too. So I think that's going to be a major part of this, obviously. But I mean, the way the year has gone for this team, let's not forget that they called the kid up. Kyle Farmer, his first major league hit was a walk-off to beat the Giants. Come on. This is the way it's going for them. Everything is falling into place for them. If they don't win this year, guys, I mean, we used to say this back in the day. We used to say this about the old San Diego Chargers, right? In like the mid-2000s, when they were like the chief challenger to the Patriots there, and they had all those stacked teams for a couple of years. We used to say, if they don't win it this year, as Chris Berman used to say it when he was on ESPN, he used to say, if not now, then what? And that's what's going on with the Dodgers right now. If not now, when?
I disagree with you guys. I think the MLB playoffs are such a crapshoot. I mean, you look at Moneyball and what Billy Beane was talking about. It's impossible to predict. It's not like any other sport, like the NBA, for example, when the best team, time after time, will end up in the finals. That's how we've had a three-peat in the finals. That's how Jordan made the finals every single year in the 90s when he wasn't playing baseball. Baseball's not like that. You got to get hot at the right time, and there's so many different factors, and it's truly a team sport. You got to bat 9 guys. You got to put 9 guys on the field. You got to pitch a new starting pitcher every single day. It's hard. It's hard to get to the World Series, and you take a look over in the East, the Washington Nationals can't even get out of the first round. And they've been one of the best teams in baseball for the past 5 seasons. It is what it is. It's hard for the cards to align. The Royals won the World Series 2 years ago, and they were 4 outs away, down 4 runs from being knocked out in the first round. A lot has to go your way to win a title. And I think if the Dodgers fall short, whether it's in the World Series or in the CS, I don't think Dodgers fans can look back and say, wow, what a horrible season. This season was a disappointment. Just like Mariners don't look back at 2001 and say, oh, man, we didn't win it all. Waste of time. I think especially because their window is so wide open. When they found out they have all this young talent, Bellinger, Seager, Chris Taylor is having an unbelievable season. And you think about the Dodgers and the teams that were falling short in these years past, and that core was Matt Kemp, Ethier. I mean, they still have Utley. They had Rollins at one point. I mean, they had Carl Crawford. They had Hanley. They had all these older guys, and they've shipped them off and got even better. And the front office deserves there's not enough credit in the entire world that front office should get. And if they fall short due to whatever reason it is, we all know Clayton Kershaw is a top 3 pitcher in baseball, and somehow he struggles in the playoffs. That doesn't mean he's not a good pitcher. If the Dodgers don't win it all this year, it doesn't mean they're not one of the greatest teams of this, let's say, millennium.
Fine, but that doesn't mean you can't be disappointed. I mean, you are absolutely right in saying that the Major League Baseball playoffs are a total crapshoot. You can be a wild card team and go all the way to the World Series and give yourself a fighting chance. But going away for this season, the Dodgers have clearly been the best team without their regulars in the lineup for the last few weeks. So for them to go into the playoffs, with, you know, I'm assuming most, if not all, their guys will be back, and they somehow losing the ALCS to NLCS with Chicago. Yes, I mean, yes, the Cubs are leading their division. They're a great team. But damn it, they're going to be pretty disappointed. They're the best team in baseball. That's the whole magic of baseball and the crapshoot thing about it. I mean, it's there, but it doesn't make it any better if you're a Dodgers fan. And to go on Mike's point about the payroll being more for the Dodgers, the expectations come with it, of course you're going to feel disappointed.
Okay, obviously, the entire season is not going to be a total disappointment if they don't win the World Series. In the aftermath, you can look back on things like that and realize, okay, we still have everybody in position to get here in the years to come. But all I'm saying is, at a certain point, the ends have to justify the means for this game. That's all.
That's fair. But I think I convinced both y'all to change your minds, and I'll take that W. The Dodgers now have a 20.5 game lead in the NL West over the 2 wildcard teams, which is just crazy to think about. Guys, do you think there are any division races as we approach September here that are not over? Do you think any team currently in the lead in its division will not win its division? Mike, we'll start with you.
I would say there's a slight chance in the AL East because the Red Sox still have a 4-game set in the Bronx at the end of the month. However, with the way the Yankees have been playing, I understand that they're killing it in Detroit these past couple nights, and Judge and Sanchez are back to just being behemoths. The Red Sox have fared pretty well against them here recently, so I feel pretty confident about them going into that series. If they go into that series at the end of the month with a 5-game lead or whatever, and they come out of there with a split in 4 games, that's still a victory because you still have the same lead. And I don't think the Yankees could overcome a 5-game lead in the month of September. So I'm inclined to say that, I think everybody who's in first place right now is going to win.
Now, the Red Sox are definitely on a roll right now. I think they should be more concerned with the Astros through the front, through the windshield, as opposed to the Yankees in the rearview mirror. But I guess that's just that natural pessimism kicking in. You brought up the Red Sox as the first team that might not hang on. I'm even freaking out about the Astros, who have 11.5 game lead, who are not playing their best ball as of late. Julian, do you think there's any team that should be concerned, or do you think the division winners are set?
The optimist that wants to see a lot of pennant races, actually come into late September, early October. I want to say they're not over. I mean, the Red Sox have that lead on the Yankees right now. Cleveland has the 4.5 lead on Minnesota. I think it's more or less coming in the AL West. The NL East is coming as well. The NL Central, the closest race we have right now. The Cubs are 3 games up on Milwaukee in the NL West. I mean, I've raved about the LA Dodgers for the last little while. I don't see the Arizona Diamondbacks somehow, jumping 20.5 games from now. I don't know. I want to be optimistic about it, but at the same time, I don't really see the Boston Red Sox moving in the division lead. I think they've been pretty good for most of the year. And as good as the Yankees have been in this year as well, I think they're just going to be in that spot as the first wild team. I think Cleveland has that division lead in tow in the AL. I have reason to believe everywhere else will more or less stay the same. That being said, I would love to see at least one of these divisions trying to get close. Maybe something happens in the NL Central where maybe the Brewers finally creep up. That being said, looking at the Brewers' schedule, they're in tough over the next few games. They're going to have some tough games ahead. So that division lead could get wider as early next year. So I'm more inclined to believe that the division leaders that are in right now are there, but I remain optimistic that we'll get some kind of fight leading towards the end of the season.
Yeah, the closest race out there is the NL Central, and that would be relying on the Milwaukee Brewers, the young ragtag team, catching the defending champs. I don't see it happening. I think everyone is pretty safe at this point. Maybe St. Louis, but they just can't play consistently enough. They had it for like one night. I think they were tied and technically had the lead in the division, but now it is gone. They lost to the Padres last night on when they should be capitalizing on some easier games. I don't see anything matriculating there. Mike, Drew, I brought it up, but I actually want your opinion on this while we're talking about it. 4-game set to end the season with the Houston Astros heading to Boston. Currently have a 4-game lead. Who gets the number 1 seed in the American League?
I think the Astros do. I get your uneasiness. Yeah, I see the finger strokes. I get it. It certainly has been a bit of a scuffle for them recently, but I just they have had way too good of a year to have it end like that. I mean, first of all, it's very weird that the Red Sox are playing the Astros for 4 games at the end of the year. I can't get my mind wrapped around that. That's a very weird tweak in the schedule.
Could work out nicely, but purely by coincidence, I agree.
Right, yeah. But I think the Astros, top to bottom, are a better team. I know they're dealing with injuries and whatnot, but I think they're gonna get it together enough to where by the middle of September, we're not really talking about the Red Sox as a 1 seed. But I should say, whoever one of those two teams, they both should desperately be trying to get that 1 seed, obviously, because if you don't get it, the consolation prize is going to be Cleveland. And for the Red Sox, that's not a good thing. We saw what happened in the division series last year. They amazingly won another game against them tonight. But the way that's a bad matchup for a lot of teams. What Terry Francona can throw up against you, especially in his rotation, that would scare the daylights out of me to see them in the division series again. But I think ultimately that's the way it's going to go, because I just think Houston's too good to lose that lead. I mean, we'll see.
I mean, yeah, people say, oh, home field advantage, not that big a deal in baseball. The Astros actually have a better record on the road, or at least they did before their previous road trip. But you're right, Cleveland is right there. I would much rather play the winner of the wild card game as opposed to Cleveland, because once you get in the playoffs, it's all about pitching, and their rotation is unmatched, particularly in a short 5-game series. I like Cleveland in a division series against either of those teams. I think they're built for the playoffs, and that'd be scary. Julian, you think the Astros hang on like Mike?
Yeah, I reasonably believe the Houston Astros. I think they've been the better team in that AL for most, if not all, of the year. I understand that one of the biggest concerns, we talked about this in the previous episode, is them being able to, play in the playoffs. But, I think they have confidence in the team, and maybe if it's not too late for the end of the month, they could still add to their rotation. That is still a possibility. No, I think the Astros could end up being that number 1 team.
Look, the Red Sox are trending very much up right now, and the Astros are trending fairly down. That being said, they do have 6 guys right now in Fresno, California, including Carlos Correa, who are on their way back to the Cavalry to hopefully hold on to that top spot. But I really put it at 50-50 right now, and if it's anywhere within 4 games come that last series, I like Boston's chances significantly better than the Astros, even if they have to win just 1 game. And I'll give you the throwback of the day. Back in 1980, I believe, the Astros had a 3-game set against the Dodgers with a 3-game lead in the NL West. And they lost every single game of the series to tie, but then won the play-in game in game 183. I thought that was interesting. I hope it doesn't come to that this year. We really got to move on. Julian, you and I talked about this last week. 8 teams in the mix. Some of them have fallen off a little bit, Toronto and Baltimore, but still technically in it for that second wild card spot. Mike Drew, who do you think gets that spot?
Well, right now, when you look in the American League, you've got Minnesota in that second place. It's just the best way I can describe the race for the second wild card is this giant bundle of crap. Look, I understand what the second wild card has done for baseball, and I love it. I actually love having the 2 wild card teams make it. We've had the discussion in the past about how we think it should be best of 3 instead of 1 game, and other people think it should be kept the way it is, whatever. Regardless, keeping that out of the discussion here. I'm inclined to say it's either going to be Minnesota or Kansas City, simply because of Kansas City's experience, having been there before. And Minnesota, I like them a pick better than the Angels. So I think it's going to be one of those two teams. If I had to pick one, again, because of the experience, I guess give me Kansas City, but I really don't feel good about it.
Yeah, Kansas City, look at those teams that made back-to-back World Series run. Their strength really was their bullpen, and most of those guys are no longer there. I'm not sure I like Kansas City. Julian, last week you were seemingly high on Seattle for some reason. You still like them?
They've actually won like 5 out of their last 7. They've been kind of holding up. That being said, the Twins, the Angels, the Royals, all still in front of them. Remember we talked about those AL East teams that were somehow in the mix. They had 3 games back last week. Rays and Orioles 4 games back. The Blue Jays won tonight, but they're still a little too far way back for the second wild card. The Mariners, I think, still have a fighting chance. I mean, for consistency's sake, at the beginning of the year, I did say we'd be one of those wildcard teams. So I may still try to pump their brakes up. Not pump their brakes, but still kind of fall behind them a little bit. But I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota, a team that's held on to that second wildcard for a little while now, baseball for down to it. And I think the Royals, I mean, playoff experience, also have a really good shot at it. Maybe Minnesota, Kansas City, I'll side with Mike on this one. But if Seattle makes it, I can tell you I told you so.
I'll tell you, though, in the American League, I'd love to see it be the Angels because I'd love to see Trout in the playoff game.
Yeah, and you just kind of jumped the gun to what I was about to get to, Mike. The Angels are half a game out right now. I don't see Minnesota hanging on. They were sellers at the deadline. They don't belong here, yet they insist on staying. They're getting great innings from Big Sexy Bartolo Colon of all people.
Sure.
But I see them running out of magic when we really get down to the final stretch. I think there's a big game going on tonight, guys, in LA between Texas and the Angels. I wonder if Texas has one last run in them in this final month. That core has seen some playoff success, or at least some playoff appearances nonetheless. But when it all comes down to it, I think you look at a guy like Mike Trout, the best player in the game, the face of the sport. That's why I'm going with the Angels. I think they get into that second spot and hang on. And Mike Socha said Garrett Richards could be coming back before the season's over. You don't know what you're going to get out of him, but it's an intriguing prospect. We got to move on because we are running out of time here. I want to play a new game. We've played Big Deal or No Deal on the show, Julian. Last week we played a little over-under. But since we have Mike Drew here, one of our play-by-play enthusiasts, we're gonna try a new game called Curtain Calls. Now, guys, I'm working at MLB Network, and a lot of the content we get from the show, I get ideas from them and their programming. But this is a straight-up steal. I flat out took it away from Chris Russo, the Mad Dog. They do it on High Heat. Great game. How it's going to work is we're going to play a clip, and we're going to rank these calls on exciting plays 1 to 5 stars. So let's get started here. Play the first one for you.
To get geared up, they can take off here. 3-2. There's a shot. Right for the wall. That's going to get Green. One run in. Here he goes. Here he comes. The throw home. The tie. The second. The tag. The Red Sox walk it off. They won the game.
That is Dave O'Brien, a Syracuse guy of Nesson over in Boston for the Red Sox. Mookie Betts getting the walk-off versus St. Louis last week. Mike Drew, how do you assess that call?
Yeah, I knew that one as soon as I was at the beginning of the clip there. Man, that number was nuts. This team's had a lot of them this year. That's one of Dave's better calls, I think, this regular season. So I would give that on a 1 through 5 scale. I'd give that a solid 4. I think that was pretty good.
Julian, what did you think of it?
I think it's a really solid call. David O'Brien, obviously too well, coming from Syracuse. But as someone who's not necessarily too fond of the Boston Red Sox, I can't give this a 4. I will opt for this.
I'm going to go with the 4-star just like Mike. I thought it was a good call, not a great call. It was a great game. And, you know, just before that, it was a really tricky situation with Matheny getting tossed and Molina arguing because the umpire called time when seemingly no player had requested it. It was really just an interesting situation. And then on that 3-2 pitch, I thought Dave was ready for the moment. I liked it a lot, and he did go to Syracuse. Dave O'Brien actually called one of my favorite baseball games of all time, and that was back in the 2005 NLDS. The Astros and Braves went 18 innings. Chris Burke at the walk-off. Great game. Dave was on the call for that one back when the playoffs were on ESPN. Missed those days. Good call from Dave. Let's move on. We got another one here. This is Joe Davis from Sportsnet LA.
Question of if, the question is who, and when. Tonight it's Puig in the ninth.
We'll start with you, Julian, this time. What'd you think of Joe Davis on that Puig walk-off double?
Epic. That just sounded very epic. Well done. Love the energy. Love the presence. Can give it that one a solid 4, especially to see Yasiel Puig. I know we were talking about him early on in the Los Angeles Dodgers segment. That is one guy who I couldn't be happier for. This is a guy who, coming into the league a few years ago, seemed fit, this misunderstood guy. Yes, he had his own problems, but this is a guy who, of all of the greatness that the Los Angeles Dodgers have been having all year, this guy has been a bright spot for them. So I'm happy to see him back.
Mike Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Julian there. I think that's a 4. That was really good stuff from Joe, and it really encapsulated what the entire season has been for the Dodgers, what we were just talking about. The question is just who every night is going to come through for them. I think that was really good. Remember at the beginning of the year when they finally named Joe Davis as the replacement for Scully, and everybody was, who's this guy? This guy's got some chops. He's pretty good. That was a good one.
Yeah, big shoes to fill. And granted, he has the luxury of knowing that his team is like destined to win at any given moment, and he was ready. We were just saying earlier, Mike, you said, if not now, when? Well, Joe just said, it's not if, it's when. So we'll see if that translates to the World Series. But in terms of that game against the White Sox, he was absolutely right and on the money. Exciting stuff in Hollywood. We got another one queued up. Let's get it going right here.
To the field. Can he do it? Back it goes, and that ball is gone. It's out of here. There's a walk-off grand slam, and the Orioles win it. A 3-home-run game for Machado.
That was Jim Hunter of Masson. We're a co-worker of our former guest, Matt D'Ambrosi. Manny Machado, 3rd home run of the game. That one to walk it off. They were down 7-5 in the bottom of the 9th. Won it on his 3rd home run. Mike, what do you think of Jim Hunter's call?
That one doesn't really do much for me. 3 at best. I'm kind of inclined to give it a 2. To be honest, I get it. No, I think it deserved more there. I mean, like you say, they were down 7-5. That's his 3rd home run of the game.
And technically had wild card implications. Technically.
Yeah. I think the only thing you really got there was the prolonged gone. Which was, I mean, it's fine. That's good. But I can't give that a rating similar to the other ones. I need a little more there.
See, I disagree with you. I think the gone is why I'm giving it only a 2. It was too much. It was like I'm a fan of Joe Buck, who's a proponent of minimalism, and that was just the complete opposite, going insane. It kind of like hurt my ears a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going with the 2. Julian, how do you feel?
You know who would have done that call some justice? A guy who does a lot of stuff. Gary Thorne.
I was
Gary
just
Thorne.
thinking, where's Gary?
Gary Thorne would have given that, if this was him doing it, I'm sure he would have given him either a 3.5 or a 4. I think the world of Gary Thorne because of his work on ESPN and all in the NHL games. And it's kind of sad to see just seeing him do, baseball. And he's not still doing bowling anymore, is he? He did bowling a few years ago. But Gary Thorne is doing bowling. Well, this would be a lot better. I have to give this a 2. It didn't really do much for me.
Would have liked to have heard Gary's call on that one. All right, got another one queued up.
Here's a half push off from Petty. And off the mark, rebounded by Johnson, and a sloppy in for McGill. Strong finish for the time. They go up by 9 at the end of 1. What a play to end off that quarter. Avery Johnson Jr. seeing the ball go off the backboard, taking the layup, laying it in. Great hustle on his part. He's played fantastic over these last few minutes, and you said it perfectly. McGill starting off hot, going up 11-2, and it's really just been all Alabama since.
All right, that's enough of that. Okay, Avery Johnson Jr., some analysis there from our very own Julian McKenzie, McGill versus Alabama. Julian, rank yourself, buddy. How'd you think you did?
So on that particular instance, I think I gave myself, a 3. I think I was able to, synthesize what had happened in the last few moments. Maybe I could have added a little more detail in that instance. But I am my own critic. So for me to give myself a 5 would be just. I think a 3 is sufficient.
Mike, how do you think your pal Julian did?
I was gonna say, where have I heard this before? You know what? I'll agree with you, Julian. I'll give you a 3 there. That was fine. You definitely conveyed that you know your stuff. Amplified your point there, which was good. I'm glad you clarified everything for me. I'll give you a 3. Room for improvement, but good.
Mike getting critique from Mike Brewer, Dan Dugan here. What's going on?
Yeah, hey, Julian, I know you guys were experiencing some technical difficulties, and this is a tough game to call because it was a blowout, kind of an expected blowout. But I think you had a nice knowledge of the opposing team. Avery Johnson Jr., the coach's son, getting a mention of him in there. I liked it. I'm going to go with a solid 4 for you there, Julian.
Thank you.
Now, Mike Drew, regrettingly, I had something pulled up for you, and it's failing to load on me right now.
Save your favorite QB.
And there's the commercial, so I'm going to have to exit out there. And to be completely honest with you, it wasn't even much of a call. It was welcome to blah, 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 the Babe Ruth.
Oh, yeah.
Series, so on and so forth. I'm sure you killed it. Maybe next time you're on the show, I'll have it loaded up for you. Again, we had those technical difficulties before the show. That's why I lost it. I want to play a clip, though, guys, assuming I still have it. No, I'm not going to play a call of my own. I could have. I don't have anything that recent. But I was very bored at work today, and it somehow I got to tweeting, listening to Houston Sports Radio, and it somehow turned into this. Take a listen.
Is the time. At Jake Lappin _MLB says, if it was below Twitter, then I wouldn't be able to send you this message and you couldn't give me a shout out on the show. We can do shout outs. Jake is, boy, look at this. He is a broadcast associate at MLB Network. He went to Syracuse and the University of Texas. Ross, that makes him somewhat cool, right? A Syracuse guy and a UT guy? Interesting. That's as pretentious as it gets.
That's as pretentious as it gets.
I was waiting for the hammer to drop.
Yeah.
There it was.
If it was just that. I was bored at work. I got my shout out, and like you said, Mike, down came the hammer. But I shot my shot. Shea Serrano, former guest of the Faceoff, would have been proud. I just wanted to mix that in there because that's what happened to me at work today. And I was sitting at my desk, listening in my headphones and looking around, and obviously no one is listening to the same thing. So I got very excited and then a little disappointed, but no one else heard it. So I had to share it somehow, and I capitalized on the face-off. Guys, we are very much running out of time, but I want to get one more thing in there. Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. Big-time fight coming up this weekend. I want to hear your predictions. Mike, you're the guest. We'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this fight?
Oh, God, I could not care less. This thing is horrible. But you know what? I will say that Mayweather's people have done a very nice job marketing this thing. trying to convince the masses that McGregor actually has a chance. And Mayweather coming out, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm kind of on my last legs. He's the better guy. He's the guy who should beat me," something like that. We all know it's a sham. Mayweather is the money man. He's going to go out there and win the fight. Excuse me, he's going to win the fight. And it's going to be terrible. I'm not watching it, but Mayweather's going to win 100%.
Julian, your thoughts?
I want to watch this to see what happens, but I know damn well it's a sham too. I get it. There are people who are trying to find a way to see if McGregor even has a fighting chance, unintended, against Floyd Mayweather. I just don't see it. I think one of two things will happen. We are either going to see Floyd Mayweather dance around the ring for 12 rounds, as evasive as possible, and McGregor obviously not knocking down, just get frustrated, and nothing happens, and people paid their money for no reason. Or McGregor gets frustrated, can't hit Mayweather, and resorts to MMA tactics by kicking him or bringing him down to the ground, something that is outside of the rules of boxing, and he gets himself disqualified. That would actually be entertaining to watch. That being said, I don't think we'll get that much entertainment watching the fight. I still want to watch it at a public interest, but save your money if you can. Save your money if you can. Don't spend the pay-per-view money. Mayweather's going to win this fight. Mayweather doesn't win. It's going to be a very interesting day after.
Yeah, I kind of have lower expectations too. This is the most hyped fight, I feel like, at least for me, since Mayweather-Pacquiao. We all know how that one ended, and there's a reason why boxing hasn't lasted in terms of popularity into our generation, because people thought that Pacquiao walked away from that fight winning because he took the most swings. Not really how it works, not really how the money man operates. I think it's going to be Mayweather by decision, like pretty much every other fight of his life. I think that's just the obvious prediction here. While we're on the subject of fighting, I want to give a shout out to not John Bones Jones, who just got caught using steroids once again, but John Jones, another guy with the same name on Twitter. As soon as the John Bones Jones news break, he mentioned the tweet and just said, "Fuck," because he has been getting destroyed in his mentions. I just want him to hang in there. I'm rooting for him. Poor John Jones, not the fighter, but the tech geek on Twitter. Guys, it's so much fun having the face-off and having Mike Drew back, especially. Long time no see, my friend. Great to catch up. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure to do this. I realize now that when we were talking about the second wild card team, I only talked about the American League. So in the National League, for all of you watching who care right now, give me Colorado. I like the Rockies. That's a good story. Thanks for having me, guys.
We kind of ran out of time on the NL wildcard discussion. Julian, any last thoughts for the people here on the face-off?
Just use this time to talk about the NL wildcard. The Milwaukee Brewers are a team that's 3 games behind the Chicago Cubs right now. They have the LA Dodgers coming up. They have the Washington Nationals coming up. The St. Louis Cardinals. I think they have another series with the Reds, which may be an easy one. But then after that, I believe they have the Chicago Cubs. So if there's one team that will find itself out of the running for a spot, it'll probably be the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, I happen to think that at least 9 of the 10 teams are already set. Doesn't make for the most exciting September, but that's my gut feeling. That's the way it is, guys. We went way past our time limit, but it was worth it. I had a good time.
As did I.
Me too, fellas. It was a pleasure.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us on the Face-Off. Guys, remember to keep watching these YouTube videos. We go out on Mixcloud. We go out on iTunes. Keep listening. Keep looking on YouTube on my channel, because we'll be there every week. Got some great stuff coming. Next week, college football is coming. We're going to preview the hell out of it. Looking forward to it. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks, as always, for listening to the Face-Off.